Yep, just started.
Okay. Cutting off the hump is a really good way to make small objects. I wanted to do it for many years, but I had a lot of problem cutting off the object that I'd thrown off the hump, or off the mound, as some say. It's really nice for making lids, spouts, little bowls and stuff. I finally learned how to cut off the hump. Ken Pincus, a friend of mine here in Portland, who was an apprentice in Japan, who's a very, very fine potter. I like people to throw off the hump when they're learning, because it's so much easier than wrestling a big chunk of clay down on the wheelhead. So I often will set up a student with a centered mound of clay and encourage them to throw off the hump. But the $64 question is, how do you get it off? So that's what I'd like to focus on today. So here's our bowl. We'd like to get it off. I have my tool. It's a piece of bamboo with a string, a piece of linen string on it. I'm going to hold it at a right angle. I'm going to allow the clay to suck it in. I'm going to pull it through. And then, voila, comes off sweet. So another piece, I'll make a tea bowl this time. Now some people say that you can't compress the bottom of your pieces throwing off the hump and you'll have cracking. I have not found this to be true myself. I do work a little bit to do compression. Refined edge that meets the lip sweetly. I'm compressing a little bit with my sponge as I'm working in there. Let's thin it a little bit here. Maybe we'll neck it just a little bit. I like a little curvaceousness to my tea bowls. I will carve this later. Yeah, it's not exactly dead level, but I don't care. So I have just made my groove with my fingernail. Slow the wheel now. I'm going to lay the string right on that track. Let go. Keep the wheel turning, pull through. Okay, let's make something really fun. I'm going to make a little ewer that could be made like for oil and vinegar, for soy sauce or something. And I'll make a stopper for it. And that'll be about the end of our clay. Now, because I'm going to really kind of want this to have a tight neck, I'm going to not be able to remove water or compress, so now I'll start necking. When I make these, I usually make a lot of them. See, I'm off just a little bit there. I don't care. I usually make a little trim chuck to turn them upside down and invert them on and trim the bottom. It's hard to balance them on their opening. Okay, so I'll throw a tiny spout for this too. So here's our little bottle. And the stopper is 3/4 of my 1-inch finger joint, and that's usually close enough for me. Okay, now I'll bring up some more clay. Now, I'm going to form the part of the stopper that goes into the bottle on the wheelhead, and then I will actually shape the decorative part of the stopper while it's sitting on the pot through a trimming process. So right now, I'm just making this little gizmo that's going to put down in there. And it doesn't need to fit in very deeply, so I'll take a little clay off. So I went to China a few years ago to Xinjiang, saw incredible Chinese throwers who used no tools at all. I decided that I was too tool reliant, so I've been practicing. I haven't managed to give up the sponge, which those guys don't even use a sponge, but that's kind of what I'm up to with the. So, as I said, I'll trim something decorative out of this blob of clay later. But I want to make sure the end that fits in fits. I think it'll be okay. And I can trim it just a little bit. So, now, to make a tiny little spout, I'll go in. Now, this will be hard to do without a needle tool. I don't have a needle tool in hand, but I want a little spout. And I'll just do a little work on it later. Maybe I'll just use my string to trim it a little bit. I always end up with a little bit on one this small, a little bit irregular. I want it thinner than that. Okay, now I can neck it. Most spouts I end up cutting, you know, so they have a certain grace to them, so it doesn't matter if it's not level at this time. Okay, that will do. Now this will give me a lot to work with for when I spout on. One of the questions that sometimes comes up is what's the biggest piece that you can throw off the hump? And I really think it's probably a good sized soup bowl. So let's have a little, how big can it go? Get the rest of this clay in here into the works. I like to angle my right hand in and create a line that delineates where the base will be. That's what I've done there by rotating my wrist. So Japanese potters use a very elegant tool, which some of you have seen, which is a, I can't remember the name of it. It's a chopstick, and then they take a piece of bamboo and they drill a hole right in the middle, so you can sort of set depth and width simultaneously. It's a pretty cool tool. I do use them when I make bowls that I want to stack. I think I could have made a bowl almost twice this size. It mostly has to do with the size of the base. You know, if the base is really wide, say wider than 4 inches, it's really hard to pick it off. I saw a Japanese potter work once who had a really interesting tool that was sort of like a big shoehorn. It was made out of water buffalo hide, and he used it just to shape the inside and press the inside. I'm going to put a little throwing mark in there. Okay, so that bowl is ready. So I'm working on my takeoff joint. I'm using my finger in this position, fingernail down, to press a nice level plane there, so I can have a deep traditional foot on this piece, like Japanese soup bowls. Now, I'm holding my tool in my right hand, extending the thread out, laying it in the groove, letting go. There is a little bit of junk clay down there, but that's really not a problem. Lift off. And as you can see from this, which is the image of that, it's nice and level. So thanks to Ken Pincus for teaching me this, and I hope that you can use this in your own work.